Hi, I'm Dave. You may remember me from such other Dork Daily videos as the Philly Film Brothers, the Dork Squad, and of course, my epic debate over whether Rob Zombie's Halloween is good. Spoilers, it still is, and I'm still willing to die on that hill. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm here, firstly, to wish you a Happy New Year. Secondly, I'm coming to you from my daughter's dramatic play corner to talk about my favorite movies of 2024. Now, famously, I do run a horror channel, Halloween Year Round. Go check it out. But I wanted to talk about more than just horror this year because there were a lot of really good movies in multiple genres. So I decided to hijack my brother Chris's channel and talk about it here. Now, you're going to see some horror on here because me being me, of course, some of my favorite movies of the year were horror, but I tried to do a good variety of genre. And well, if you don't like it, leave an angry comment. This is YouTube. It's what you do here. So without further ado, and without further agitating the audience, let's jump right into my top 10 favorite movies of 2024. Number 10, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. This was a really weird but interesting franchise. I mean, I'm talking about the reboot franchise in the sense that they kind of remade the movies in reverse order because we started with Caesar leading his rebellion with Rise of the Planet of the Apes in 2011. What's interesting about this one, though, is this feels like a remake of the original Planet of the Apes, which showed a world already governed by apes for centuries and how they treated the humans much the way humans treat animals, in a not so thinly veiled metaphor in how we people treat other people. It was really cool to see. I mean, this is a whole new world. We're done with Caesar, and we see how people centuries later, apes centuries later, kind of twist his words and get, like, they all claim to worship him. They all claim to be following his example, but they're all doing pretty messed up things, which again doesn't feel that different from human history and the way that atrocities are carried out sometimes in the name of religion. So that was just a really interesting metaphor, and it was just cool to see this world, fully gone there, while also kind of staying true a little bit to stuff from Beneath the Planet of the Apes, the initial sequel. So it was cool to see all that realized in a truly sort of epic adventure. Number 9, The Wild Robot. I was not expecting to like this movie as much as I did. I took my daughters to see it because they saw the ads for it. On YouTube, we're like, I want to go see that robot movie. I'm like, all right, kids movies. When you have kids, you see a lot of kids movies, and they're not all winners. This one is. I went in expecting just like your standard, animated movie fare. Could be good. We'll see. And what I got was this really heartwarming, poignant story about, you know, a sense of belonging and finding one's family, and this robot that was, what was her purpose in life. And you've got voice talents of Lupita Nyong'o, you've got Mark Hamill, you've got Pedro Pascal, you've got Bill Nye, and just a really talented voice cast for a movie that is way deeper and way more emotional than I was prepared for taking my kids to see it. I love this movie. It's so, it feels like one of those old school kids movies from like the 80s. The Don Bluth kind, where it's like you can show any messed up thing to a kid as long as there's a happy ending. And by the time you get to that ending, you feel so uplifted, you feel so inspired. Number 8, Wicked. I had to make sure I left enough space in here for the, see what I did there? All right, so if this were my wife's list, Wicked would be number 1 and would be the only movie on the list. She's seen it, I think, 4 times in theater. She's kind of obsessed. I only saw it twice. I took her to see it, and then I went with my daughter another time. I really liked it. As I'm a fan of musicals. I know I don't seem that way, but I am. You have really good songs. I can't deny that, like, yes, chills were sent down my spine when Cynthia Erivo hits those notes. When she's singing Defying Gravity, you're like, wow. Like, what a showstopper. I see why they wanted to end the movie on this, because it's so epic. It's so awe-inspiring. But what really impressed me about the movie was just how practical everything was. The fact that they actually built a massive set for the Emerald City. They actually built the train. They actually like planted a bunch of wheat or something, like just so it wasn't CGI. And to a movie fan who's so used to seeing everything just be in front of a blue screen, green screen, whatever color screen you want to use, so that everything's fake, it was really refreshing to see things that are actually there and that actually feels like a real organic movie. All the singing, the singing and the storyline and all that other stuff, which just felt like a bonus. Love Cynthia Erivo in this. Ariana Grande won me over. I wasn't sure how she was gonna do, but she's really funny, and she can be a mean girl when she wants to be, but she can also be like a really loyal ride or die best friend when she wants to be. So I don't know what's going to happen in the second one. I am intentionally avoiding spoilers for it. I'm going to go see it with open eyes, but I really, really enjoyed this one, and that's why it made the list. Number 7, A Quiet Place, Day 1. I know what you're thinking. A prequel third installment to a sci-fi horror-ish monster movie is on the top 10 list. It is, and I'll tell you why. Not only is A Quiet Place Day 1 way better than it should be, it's the best movie out of the three. It's better than the first one, and I'll go on record and say that. Firstly, I love seeing the fall of civilization. No, I'm not an anarchist. What I mean by that is a lot of post-apocalyptic media kind of shows after society collapses, and it always kind of skips over the process of how it happened. This movie exists right in that spot, right where the aliens land, all hell breaks loose, and I like seeing that for a change. I think it's really interesting to see like how humans react and how we go from normal everyday civilization to everything falling apart in the post-apocalypse. But what I really liked about the movie is hidden in this sci-fi monster survival horror movie set in New York City is a really poignant, inspiring, emotional story about living one's life. That at the end of the day, it shouldn't take the end of the world for you to live your life. And that just really spoke to me. Lupita Nyong'o and Joseph Quinn are amazing in it. And I did not expect to. I expect to walk out of it being like, "Oh, that was a cool sci-fi monster movie," but I wasn't expecting to feel so inspired by this movie. Number 6, The Substance. I told you there was going to be some horror on here, and I know people are saying The Substance is like, well, it's horror, Jason. It's basically like a body horror Cronenberg-esque movie. What I love about it was its absolute commitment to never letting up. It exponentially gets more insane as it goes and just keeps going and going and going, all while telling a really kind of interesting and relevant metaphor about our fears of aging. And I think in particular the pressure that women feel in society that like you must look perfect, you must look a certain way. And I think horror has always been a really good genre to take these real life issues and real life, things we think about, ideas and themes, and extrapolating it to absurd territory. But by doing so, it kind of exposes, what's lying under there. And I think that The Substance does a really, really good job of doing that. Number 5, Saturday Night. If you had told me that there was such thing as a comedy thriller, I would have said, "What's that?" Well, I can tell you what that is. It's Saturday Night. We have the benefit of 50 years of hindsight to know that, yes, obviously, Saturday Night Live is a very successful show. It's still on today. It's, how many A-list celebrities have gotten their start there, how many comedians have gotten their start there, how many famous names have graced that studio and that stage. But on October 11th, 1975, none of that was for sure. None of that was for certain. And this movie makes you feel that tension. Because even though in the back of your mind, you know it's going to be a hit, you're like, oh my God, how are they going to come back from this? How is it? They can't find Belushi? George Carlin's coked out of his mind? The set's falling apart? A fire just broke out? Johnny Carson is calling Lorne Michaels, telling him he hopes it fails. Disclaimer, a lot of this movie's for dramatic effect. I'm not saying everything that happens in this movie is 100% factual. I'm just presenting the movie as it is. Anyways, it takes all of these elements that we know the eventual outcome, but it still is a really good, again, comedic thriller that it feels it's a race against the clock that you're used to seeing that in a horror movie. You're used to seeing that in an action movie. You're not used to seeing that in a comedy movie. And Jason Reitman really delivers. And I can't talk about this movie without mentioning the cast. Oh my god, every single member of the cast has their cast member down. It is amazing. It feels it feels like they're doing their own sketch of SNL of those original actors, but they're not playing it up to 11 for comedic effect. There's subtlety to it. There's you can see it's a big ensemble, but every single character gets a moment to shine. Number 4, Long Legs. It's a Silence of the Lambs esque FBI police procedural serial killer crime thriller horror with Nicolas Cage as the killer. What more could you want? Oh, it has Nicolas Cage being extremely creepy and singing? What more could you want? Oh, it's almost hypnotic and disturbing and gets under your skin even to a seasoned horror fan like me? What more could you want? Long Legs was a movie that was incredibly cryptic with its marketing campaign, and then when you see the actual movie, you realize it's just as weird, mysterious, and cryptic. It's not the kind of horror movie that jumps out and scares you, but it leaves you thinking about it long after you've seen it, and it is without a doubt one of my favorite Nicolas Cage performances I think ever. I mean, yes, he's Long Legs, but he's used just sparingly enough. Again, not to compare it again to Silence of the Lambs, kind of like Anthony Hopkins in Silence of the Lambs. He's in it just enough that he has a presence over the whole movie and that he steals and owns every single scene that he's in. Number 3, Dune Part 2. It's very hard to pull off a finale, and I know that it may be cheating a little bit because yes, it's the sequel, but it's really just the second half of the story. So I get that, but for a second installment for like the second half of the story that pays off everything the first one sets up, it really pays it off. You get Christopher Walken. You get Christopher Walken as the Emperor, which is not a sentence I ever thought I'd say. You have Timothy Chalamet as Paul, embracing his status as the Muad'Din, and I love how I call it Space Game of Thrones. It's a much more satisfying conclusion than last season of Game of Thrones was because it delivers while still kind of setting up everything that I love that it ends not on a good note. And it's like this character you've been following the whole time. You're like, I don't know if he's the good guy. But again, Game of Thrones had 8 seasons to do it, and this does it in 2 movies with a really satisfying conclusion and just amazing set building and world building that I have not seen the likes of since Lord of the Rings. Number 2, Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. Back in 2015, Mad Max Fury Road kind of took the world by storm and blew us all away that wow, this is what action movies can be. They can be practical, they can have amazing set pieces, amazing practical stunts. You can have the director returning after decades to go and do this. And then you get Furiosa. Fury Road was this epic 2-hour adrenaline rush chase. Furiosa is the epic poem worthy of the Iliad or the Odyssey. It is on par with that. It is this epic journey across the wasteland that just when you see what she went through, oh my god, when everything about this movie, the world building, the fact that little things we saw snippets of in Fury Road are fully realized here, but without it ever feeling like prequelitis. George Miller spent years, ever since Fury Road, developing the story here, and it really, really shows. That's its biggest strength is its story, and that it feels like this epic tale, and that Furiosa is up there with Achilles, Odysseus, and these epic mythic figures. And finally, number 1, Nosferatu. I'm a horror guy, of course. I had to have the number 1 movie be a horror movie, but that wasn't even my bias. Nosferatu is just that good. Robert Eggers, everything he does with his attention to detail, with his almost hypnotic suspense and tension, it was on display in The Witch, it was on display in The Lighthouse, it was on display in The Northman, and it is very much on display with Nosferatu. Even the set, down to like the last detail, everything is period accurate to what they would be doing at the time. He didn't even use CGI for the 2,000 rats in the one scene with Willem Dafoe. Those were real rats because of his like insane attention to detail. All of which, culminates in a genuinely scary, unsettling movie that makes vampires frightening again, and that boasts performance. I love Bill Skarsgård in it, but he doesn't even steal the show. Lily Rose Depp and Willem Dafoe do. Willem Dafoe, I mean, you know what you're getting with him. You know that he can give an amazing, unhinged performance that's equal parts hilarious and like, is this guy serious? Is he insane? I'm kind of scared of him. But I really like what Lily Rose Depp here does. She kind of goes through the hysteria that as it would have been diagnosed at that time, and she shows this range that, like, first of all, her accent, her voice was unrecognizable. I never would have. Close your eyes, that's not the voice you hear. Her English accent is on point, and she definitely inherited the acting talents from both her mom and her dad. She steals every scene she's in, and in the end, not to get into spoilers, the movie winds up being just as poetic and tragic as it is frightening and terrifying. Couple that with every single ingredient, the costume design, the acting, the set design, the backgrounds, the lighting, the camera shots, every single technical thing is absolutely perfect because it was thought out for months and years in advance by Robert Eggers, and you have the masterpiece that is Nosferatu. But hey, these are just my 10 favorite movies from 2024. Let me know what yours are in the comments. Like, share, subscribe to Dork Daily. Also, check out my channel, Halloween Year Round, if you're a fan of horror. And Happy New Year!